What happens when every strategy you've ever used to avoid your feelings suddenly gets taken away? Today, I'm talking about a moment on a TV show where that exact thing happens. It really struck me, and I'm going to talk about that and what it has to do with binge eating and your struggles with food. So let's dive in. Welcome to Binge Eating Breakthrough, the podcast to help you stop feeling out of control around food and build trust with your body. If you've tried everything but still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've been there too. I'm Jane Pilger, and I'm here to help you see binge eating in a new way so you can finally break free. Each week, you'll get the tools and insights to create peace with food and your body. Your breakthrough starts now. Hello, trusted listener. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you're willing to look honestly at the things that are hard to see. Not just the food, not just the binges, but the deeper patterns underneath that have been running the show for a long time. That takes courage, and it's exactly what today's episode is about. So I want to start by telling you about a man named Peter. Peter was a contestant on season 11 of a show named Alone on the History Channel. So this show, I personally am watching it on Netflix, but it was originally produced by the History Channel, and this is season 11. And if you haven't seen Alone, here's the premise. 10 people get dropped off individually, all in separate places, into the wilderness. They're all in the same basic area, but they have no contact with each other or with anybody from the outside world. So this season, season 11, they are dropped into the Arctic Circle in northern Canada. So cold, very cold. They are dropped off with minimal gear. They each get 10 items to take with them. There is no crew. There is no contact with the outside world. They film themselves. They survive alone. When they decide they can't take it anymore, whether it is an injury, whether it is starvation, whether it is for whatever reason, when they decide they can't take it anymore, they tap out. And the last one standing wins $500,000. So personally, I love this show. I watch it on my indoor bike trainer while I'm riding my bike. And what I love about it is that these contestants, this whole premise takes them to the depths. And you really get to see how these people who are able to go long periods of time alone in the wilderness, how they actually do it. You get to see what they're thinking about. The relationship they develop with the land, with the food that they catch, and with the parts of themselves that just want to quit and go home to the comfort of their loved ones. These people in the wilderness alone meet themselves. And watching other people meet themselves is something that I really find interesting because so often we don't really meet ourselves. There is so many opportunities to distract ourselves, to avoid ourselves. And when you are alone in the wilderness, there you are. Now, before I go any further, I want to offer just a gentle heads up about this show if you haven't seen this show. If you have a history of disordered eating or struggles with food, this show alone may bring some things up for you. So the contestants, they have to source all of their own food. They often go days or weeks without eating anything, and they go through what is essentially an extended period of food scarcity. They all lose a significant amount of weight over the course of the show. And that content could activate something in your own system around eating, not eating, or even just the changes in their bodies. And so only you can know whether that's something that you want to engage with. So just because I love this show and I am talking about this show, Please don't feel like you have to watch it. I invite you to check in with yourself. Now, this may be exactly the kind of thing that resonates with you, or it may be something to skip entirely. So you get to decide that for yourself. But what I want to bring you today isn't about survival or even food scarcity at all. It's about something that happened emotionally for one of the contestants, this guy Peter that I was telling you about, and what it revealed about the ways that we protect ourselves from our own feelings. So even if you never watch alone, this episode will stand alone in terms of what you can think about for yourself. So here's what happened with Peter. He was really remarkable to watch. I was fascinated with him before they even dropped him out in the wilderness. He was a 42-year-old librarian from British Columbia. So everything that he had learned about survival, he first learned from books in the library. And he read these books. And then, of course, he had to take what he read out into the wilderness so that he could apply these things for himself. But he was very unique in that, number one, I think he's the first librarian contestant, but so many of these other contestants, they learned survival skills by being out in the wilderness. So many people, their parents taught them, or they had some other scenario where they learned these skills. But Peter was unique from the beginning in that he first learned by reading books. Now, from the moment he was dropped in the wilderness, he got to work. He had built a solid shelter. He figured out the whole fishing thing so quickly. He's pulling all kinds of massive pike out of the river. So he's got a lot of food. He built a smoker to preserve the fish so he could be out there longer. He had food stocked. He had shelter secured, all in the first week. And watching these first few days and watching where he was compared to where everybody else was in terms of shelter and in terms of food, anybody watching is looking at Peter and thinking, this guy has a shot. He is really likely he could win this thing. And then, surprisingly, on day 8, he tapped out. Not because he was sick, not because he was starving, not because of anything going wrong with his body or anything on the outside, which is so often the things, especially in that first week, that is what leads people to tap out. But what happened is that the wilderness gave him something that he did not bargain for, something he never could have found or read about in his survival books in the library. With no distractions, with no busyness, with nobody to take care of, and no tasks to complete beyond the basics, Peter was left completely alone with himself. And what surfaced was something that he had been keeping underneath for a long time. So he starts talking about his son, and he's thinking about his son, and he shares that his son feels big feelings. And Peter realized that he didn't know how to meet his son and his big feelings. He couldn't relate to them. He had spent years of his own life managing his own emotions, and by managing, really, he just kept them contained. He kept them at a distance. So he just kept himself moving and doing and achieving. His wife said that they had been married for 15 years and she hadn't ever seen him cry. But out there in the Arctic, alone, with no way to stay busy and to stay away from his emotions, he cried. He was flooded with sadness and grief. And he didn't know what to do with it. It all felt so big and so overwhelming. These emotions that he had avoided and tried to stay away from for so long, he couldn't get away from them. But he didn't know what to do with them. So he tapped out. And he went home. And he realized that gap between him and his son, it wasn't about his son's big feelings at all. It was about his own feelings that he had never learned to do with. And what was so interesting about it is he was talking about how he navigated his son and his son's big feelings. And he basically thought that he was helping his son by showing him how to avoid the feelings, by really encouraging his son, not to feel, not to have the big feelings. And he realized only as he was out there, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm helping him at all. These feelings are here. His son's feelings are real. It's like, he basically said, I need to go home. I need to learn how to deal with these feelings. I need to learn how to be with my son and his feelings. And what I've been trying to do to help him hasn't helped him at all. And it hasn't helped me either. And so while I was watching the show, I'm on my bike trainer. I'm pedaling. I'm moving. I am staying productive. I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally can see myself in this story. This wasn't just a story about Peter. And I think that's why I love these shows so much is I like to either see myself, maybe I can see other clients, other people that I know in their stories. And what struck me so deeply about this situation with Peter is he was not struggling in spite of his survival skills. He was thriving because of them. His survival skills were on lock. He was competent. He was capable. He was resourceful. He was doing everything right. And that is exactly what makes this pattern so hard to see in ourselves. Because the strategies that we use to stay on the surface of our emotions often look like strengths. And often they are strengths that get rewarded and celebrated. Productivity, achievement, staying busy, being reliable, capable, always moving toward the next thing. Do you see yourself in any of these? They're not character flaws. They're celebrated. They're rewarded. Nobody looks at the person who is always accomplishing things and says, I'm worried about you. What's going on underneath the surface? Are you able to slow down? Are you able to stop? Here's what they say. They say, I don't know how you do it. I hear that a lot. But what happens when those strategies get taken away? That's exactly what the wilderness and alone did to Peter. It removed every option he had for staying on the surface of himself. What was underneath had been there for a long time waiting. Now, I want to talk about this in the context of binge eating, those moments where you feel out of control with food. Because what Peter experienced out there is something that I see playing out in a very similar way for so many people who struggle with food. So binge eating, it's often described as being out of control. Some people think of it as a failure of willpower, as something that happens to you rather than something that is trying to happen for you. But what if a binge is, in part, the body's version of what the wilderness did to Peter? What if it's the moment when the usual strategies stop working and something that has been underneath finally breaks through? If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you have heard me say binges are the light on the dashboard. They tell us there is something going on underneath the hood. It's not the food. It's not the binge. It's what is happening under the hood that is causing those lights to come on in the first place. So think about it for yourself. You go through your day. You're managing. You're productive. You're holding it all together. And then something shifts. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's nothing you can actually name, but then suddenly you're eating and you can't stop. And then afterwards, there's this shame and this confusion and the question, why do I keep doing this? I know better. Why can't I do better? The binge in that moment is the body trying to get a need met. It is reaching for something, comfort, relief, a pause, a way to discharge what has been building underneath. And the problem is that it isn't the rest that the body was actually reaching for. When we end up eating in this way, the body has to work so hard to process all of that food. It's not restful. The shame and the judgment that follow mean that whatever was there underneath, the stress, the grief, the unexpressed emotion, the exhaustion, doesn't actually get resolved. It gets compounded. The underlying thing is still there, and now there's more weight on top of it. Sometimes it's literal weight, sometimes it's emotional weight, but there's more. We've compounded it. It's not a willpower problem, it's a capacity problem. There is a very important difference. Peter did not leave the Arctic because he was weak. He left because he didn't have the skills to be with what surfaced. He had never developed them because he never needed to, or so he thought. His coping strategies had worked well enough on the outside that he never had to face what was happening on the inside. Until he did. Until he truly couldn't do anything. There it was. There he was. Now, I want to be honest here because this isn't just something that I observe in clients or that I see in people on reality TV. This is something that I live with too. I still have a pull toward doing and achieving and keeping myself in motion. I find it hard to give myself permission to rest, to truly rest, not just rest long enough to get back to doing. I'm in my own ongoing process of building capacity, the capacity to be with emotions instead of moving away from them, the capacity to let my body feel safe with stillness, the capacity to be present with what's underneath rather than disconnect from it or find a way around it. And I really do believe there's a balance here. There is a part of me that thinks, if I go still, if I give myself permission to rest, then I won't stop. I won't start again. I like to go. I like to do. I like to be active. And that is true. And if I believe that if I rest, then I'm just going to stop, then of course there's going to be a part of me that isn't going to want to do that. So I'm in my own process of doing this work. I'm not on the other side of this, teaching from a distance, saying here is the magic answer. I have it all figured out. I am literally on this journey as well. And I'll tell you something about the bike trainer. I notice the fact that I'm often moving, doing something productive, even when I'm resting. There's a part of me that finds it hard to be still. But I am developing more capacity for that, more safety within myself to be still, more encouragement, reminding myself of what that stillness and that safety is creating in me, giving me even more capacity so that when I do more things and I do get back to action, I am capable of even more. But becoming aware of all of this, seeing it for what it is rather than assuming it's just because I like to multitask or I like to be busy, that awareness is part of the work. Becoming aware of when it does feel hard to slow down. Something to get curious about, not shame myself for. It just reveals the next layer of growth. Because here's what I know from my own experience and from years of working with people on this. The survival strategies. We figure them out on our own, and we're really good at them. We have repeated them over and over. To use the analogy of Peter, we build our shelters. We catch our fish. We keep ourselves going. But the real work is building the capacity to be with what's underneath the hood, underneath the surface, to bring safety into experiences that have never felt safe, to be with emotions that have felt too big or too much. That is much harder to do alone. Increasing that capacity, sometimes it takes work. It takes being with somebody else to show us how to do it. And it often requires being with someone else who can help you learn what that safety feels like if you've never felt it for yourself. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's the nature of this kind of work. The experience of feeling safe enough to be with difficult emotions without shutting down or running or eating. It's something we often learn in relationship. We learn it with someone who can be calm when we aren't, who can stay present when we want to flee, who can help us practice something we've never had the chance to practice before. This is co-regulation. Sometimes we literally can't do it on our own. Peter, I have no doubt, went home and sought support. What he found out there wasn't something he could just decide to handle differently on his own. That's why he tapped out. It's like, I can't do this. I cannot be out here with this on my own. I need help. It was a revelation about a pattern that had been in place for a long time. This pattern that was affecting his most important relationships. That kind of thing asks for more than insight. It is asking for the actual experience of doing it differently over time and with support. So if hearing about Peter's story today helped you recognize maybe yourself in that, if you recognize that pull toward doing and achieving and staying busy, or maybe you also recognize that binge eating or your moments with food have sometimes been the way your body forces a pause when everything else stops working, I want to invite you to reach out. There's a conversation that we can have. It's called a breakthrough call. And it's a chance for you to talk about what's actually going on for you, what you've already tried, and whether working together might be the right next step for you. So the link to book that call is at janepilger.com/breakthrough. You don't have to figure this out on your own. Those survival strategies, you've already proven that you're good at those. But what comes next is a different kind of work. A different kind of work that will lead you to different results. And that work does not have to be done alone. Sometimes in the beginning, we can't do it alone because we are so ingrained, so wired in those repetitive survival strategies that doing something different isn't available on our own. But when we reach out and we get the right support, everything can change. That's what I have for you today. I'll see you next week. If you know you want to rebuild self-trust, if you know you want to stop looking outside yourself for answers and start listening to the part of you that already knows what you need, but you can't seem to do it on your own, I want to invite you to join me in The Gathering. It's a monthly space where you can reconnect with yourself and rebuild trust from the inside out. Learn more at janepilger.com/gather.